It was supposed to be a routine day on Capitol Hill. Another congressional hearing packed with reporters, aides, and cameras. But this one had a special kind of electricity in the air. Everyone knew that whenever Representative Ilhan Omar took the mic, sparks were guaranteed to fly. Across from her sat today's witness, a confident Trump supporter, an outspoken political commentator, known for never backing down from confrontation. He adjusted his suit, calm and steady, scanning the crowded chamber, while Omar reviewed her notes with laser focus. The tension was thick even before the gavel struck. Reporters whispered, setting up their recorders. Members of Congress leaned forward, anticipating fireworks. Omar began with her trademark poise, sharp tone, piercing gaze. Her first question cutting straight through the silence. "Mr. Daniels," she said, her voice cool. "You've been a vocal supporter of former President Trump, correct?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied, polite but fearless. Omar smiled thinly. "Then perhaps you can explain to this committee why you continue to defend policies that have divided millions of Americans." Gasps rippled through the room. The hearing had officially begun. The Trump supporter didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned into the microphone, voice calm and steady. "With respect, Congresswoman, I think the real question is why we've allowed politics to divide us, instead of uniting us around truth." A few eyebrows shot up. That wasn't the reaction anyone expected. Omar's expression tightened. She fired back another question, this one sharper, meant to corner him. But he countered smoothly, his tone respectful, his logic tight. Within minutes, the energy in the room shifted. People who came expecting a clash were now holding their breath, sensing something different. The witness wasn't intimidated. He was prepared. Every answer landed with precision, every word delivered with quiet confidence. Even some committee members began exchanging looks. Half amused, half impressed, Omar leaned forward, clearly surprised that her usual tactics weren't rattling him. And then, one remark from the witness changed everything. The entire chamber fell silent, unsure if they'd just witnessed a masterclass in calm defiance or the beginning of something unforgettable. What happened next had everyone in Congress, even Omar's own allies, bursting out in laughter. The air in the chamber grew heavier. Cameras zoomed in as Ilhan Omar adjusted her microphone, clearly regrouping. She wasn't used to being challenged this calmly, especially not by a Trump supporter. She glanced briefly at her notes, then looked back up, her tone sharpening. "Mr. Daniels, are you suggesting that this committee, or I personally, am dividing Americans?" A few heads turned. The question sounded innocent, but the tone carried weight. It was a trap, the kind Omar had perfected. Forced the witness to either backtrack or sound confrontational. But Mr. Daniels didn't blink. "Not at all, Congresswoman," he said, his voice calm and respectful. "I'm suggesting that both sides of the aisle could spend more time solving problems and less time pointing fingers." A faint chuckle rippled through the audience. Even some of the congressional aides tried to hide their smirks. Omar's lips tightened, though she remained composed. "Interesting," she said, flipping through her folder. "Because according to your social media posts," she lifted a printed screenshot, "you've accused members of this very committee of being anti-American and biased against conservatives. Would you like to explain that?" The crowd murmured. Omar's words had teeth. Daniels leaned forward, unshaken. "Absolutely, Congresswoman," he replied. "I said that when politicians use identity or emotion to score political points instead of focusing on policy, they stop serving Americans. All Americans." The statement hung in the air like a challenge. A few people in the room nodded quietly. Omar didn't like the shift in tone. She pressed harder. "So you're saying I'm guilty of that?" Daniels smiled politely. "Ma'am, I'm saying if the shoe fits, anyone should consider wearing it." A burst of laughter broke out from the back of the room. Even a few lawmakers tried to suppress their grins. The chairman tapped the gavel lightly, signaling for order. Omar exhaled sharply, tapping her pen against her notes. She wasn't about to lose control of the exchange. "Let's stay professional, Mr. Daniels," she said firmly. "This isn't a comedy club." "Of course not," he replied smoothly. "But sometimes truth has a sense of humor." The laughter grew louder. Short, nervous, but real. Omar's expression froze. This was not the reaction she had planned for. She straightened in her chair, reclaiming authority. "Mr. Daniels," she said, her voice regaining edge, "let's talk about credibility. Why should this committee, or the American people, take your testimony seriously when your record shows clear political bias?" Daniels didn't move. He simply nodded. "A fair question," he said. "But if personal bias disqualified anyone from speaking, I think half this room would be empty." The chamber exploded. Laughter, applause, gasps. Even the chairman couldn't hide a grin as he reached for the gavel again. "Order, please," he said, chuckling. "Order!" Omar's patience was wearing thin. "Mr. Daniels," she snapped. "This is a hearing, not a campaign rally." He leaned back slightly, still calm. "You're right, Congresswoman, which is why I hope the questions get more serious soon." That line hit like a jab in a boxing ring. Sharp, fast, and right on target. The audience roared again. A few reporters exchanged stunned looks. They hadn't seen someone flip the energy of a hearing like this in years. Omar sat back, lips pressed tight. She looked at the chairman as if asking for backup, but he only shrugged lightly, motioning her to continue. She gathered her papers and took a deep breath. "Fine," she said. "Let's move to specifics." She began reading from a document, data, reports, numbers. But Daniels interrupted softly. "Excuse me, Congresswoman, just for clarity. Are these your numbers, or from a third-party source?" She frowned. "They're from official sources." "Wonderful," he said with a nod. "Because last month, those same sources admitted their data was incomplete. Would you like me to cite the correction for you?" The entire room froze. A few journalists began typing furiously. Omar looked momentarily caught off guard, flipping through her binder to verify. The silence stretched. Daniels didn't press. He simply waited, calm and confident, the picture of composure. Omar finally spoke, trying to recover. "We can revisit that later," she muttered. He smiled gently. "No rush. I'll wait." Laughter erupted again, this time louder, freer, unstoppable. Even the chairman laughed openly, shaking his head as he tapped the gavel. It was official. The room had turned. The Trump supporter wasn't just holding his ground. He was owning the moment. Reporters whispered, "He's flipping the script on her." Cameras zoomed in on Omar's face. Her trademark calm replaced with quiet irritation. Daniels folded his hands. "Congresswoman, with respect, I came here to answer questions, not play politics. But if we're doing both, I'll do my best to keep it fair." That line broke the room. People laughed, clapped, and even a few lawmakers pounded the table in amusement. Omar glanced at the chairman again, this time clearly frustrated, but the chairman just smiled. "Let the man finish," he said, and so Daniels did, delivering one more perfectly measured line that left everyone speechless. "Madam Congresswoman," he said, "sometimes the loudest person in the room isn't the one who's right, just the one with the microphone." The laughter that followed could be heard down the hallways of Congress. Omar blinked, momentarily speechless. For the first time that day, she had no comeback. The cameras captured every second. The smirks, the gasps, the stunned silence that followed. What had started as a tense hearing was quickly turning into the most unexpected political comedy of the year. But just when the crowd thought the exchange was over, Daniels delivered one final punch that had Congress on its feet. The chamber still buzzed from laughter. Even after the chairman struck his gavel twice, the murmurs and chuckles refused to die down. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled, and the energy in the room felt less like a hearing, more like the opening act of a political showdown. Ilhan Omar leaned forward, her jaw tight, but her voice steady. "Mr. Daniels," she began, forcing a thin smile, "I see you've come well prepared, but let me remind you, this is not a debate stage. You are here as a witness." Daniels nodded, hands folded neatly. "Of course, Congresswoman. And as a witness, I'm sworn to tell the truth. Even when it's inconvenient." A low ooh rolled through the audience. A few lawmakers looked up from their notes. The tone of the hearing had shifted. This wasn't the calm witness they expected. This was a man unafraid to match intellect for intellect, wit for wit. Omar straightened, clearly trying to regain control. "Then let's talk truth," she said, voice rising slightly. "You've claimed that this administration's critics are spreading misinformation. Do you stand by that statement?" "Absolutely," Daniels replied without hesitation. "Even," Omar pressed, "when that criticism comes from elected officials, like myself." He paused for just a moment, meeting her eyes. "Especially then, Congresswoman," gasps echoed through the chamber. The words hit like a hammer. Omar blinked, stunned that he'd said it so directly. In her own hearing, no less. Before she could respond, Daniels leaned forward, his tone even but firm. "You see, misinformation isn't about party labels. It's about repeating what sounds good instead of checking what's true. And with respect, that's been happening a lot in this room." The reaction was immediate. Murmurs, laughter, even scattered applause. The chairman half smiled as he tapped his gavel again. "Order, please. Let's keep this civil." Omar inhaled deeply, trying to keep her composure. "Mr. Daniels, you seem very comfortable turning my questions into speeches." He smiled faintly. "Only when the speeches need better writing." The room exploded. Lawmakers were laughing openly now, some hiding their faces behind papers, others clapping their hands in disbelief. Even the stenographer looked like she was trying not to grin. Omar wasn't laughing. "Mr. Daniels," she said tightly, "you're being disrespectful to this committee." Daniels shook his head. "Not at all, Congresswoman. I'm being honest. There's a difference. One we could use more of in Washington." A ripple of applause spread again before the chairman's gavel brought the room back under control. Omar sat silently for a moment, flipping her pages, pretending to read. The silence stretched. Daniels broke it. "Congresswoman, if I may ask, is this hearing about getting answers or making headlines?" She looked up startled. "Excuse me, I'm just curious," he continued, "because if the goal is truth, I'm here for it. But if it's performance, well, I don't want to steal the spotlight." Laughter thundered through the chamber. Even members of the press, trying to maintain professionalism, were smiling behind their cameras. Omar leaned in, voice cold. "You think this is a joke, Mr. Daniels?" "No, ma'am," he said calmly. "I think the American people deserve transparency. If laughter comes with it, that's just democracy having a sense of humor." That line sealed it. The crowd went wild. A mix of applause and laughter, echoing across the hearing room. It was the kind of moment that every political commentator dreams of capturing. Raw, unscripted, unforgettable. Omar, visibly frustrated now, tried to pivot. "All right, let's talk about your so-called facts," she said. "You've been quoted defending certain policies that, frankly, many find discriminatory." Daniels looked genuinely interested. "Which policy specifically?" She flipped a page. "Immigration reform." He nodded. "Ah, yes. The one where legal immigrants like my own father waited 10 years to do things the right way. That one." Omar hesitated. The response hit too close to home. "That's not the point," she said quickly. "Oh, I think it is," he replied softly. "Because rules aren't discrimination, Congresswoman. They're structure. And if we abandon structure, we get chaos. The kind that makes hearings like this necessary." The audience broke into applause again. Cameras panned across the faces of lawmakers trying, and failing, to hide their amusement. Omar clenched her pen. "You seem to enjoy this, Mr. Daniels." He tilted his head slightly. "I enjoy clarity, ma'am, and if it makes people laugh, maybe it's because truth has a funny way of showing up uninvited." Another wave of laughter rolled through the room. Even a few of Omar's fellow Democrats couldn't suppress their smirks. The chairman gave up trying to keep order and simply leaned back, watching it unfold like everyone else. Daniels continued, voice calm but commanding. "Look, Congresswoman, I didn't come here to spar. I came here to speak for people who feel unheard. The ones who pay taxes, follow laws, and still get called names because they support the wrong candidate. That's not democracy. That's division." The laughter stopped. Now, the room was silent, attentive. His words carried weight, not sarcasm. The humor had turned into something deeper. Omar studied him, her earlier confidence replaced by quiet frustration. For a moment, she seemed unsure how to respond. Daniels glanced toward the cameras, then back at her. "You asked why I defend President Trump. It's simple. I defend anyone who gets misrepresented by headlines before they get heard by humans, whether it's Trump or someone you disagree with. I believe fairness should be equal." It was the kind of statement that cut across politics and hit straight to principle. The crowd murmured, not laughing now, but nodding, listening. Omar cleared her throat. "Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Your time," he interrupted gently. "With respect, Congresswoman, I thought truth didn't have a time limit." The room exploded. Laughter, applause. Even a few cheers filled the air. Cameras caught Omar's frozen expression as the chairman smiled and raised his gavel. "All right," he said, chuckling. "I think we can all agree. That was unexpected." Reporters whispered. He flipped the whole script on her. Others were already posting clips online. Within minutes, the moment would go viral. But for now, inside that chamber, all anyone could see was a calm man with a smirk and a congresswoman realizing she'd just lost control of her own hearing. But just when everyone thought it couldn't get any crazier, Daniels dropped one final line that made Congress erupt in laughter. The air inside the hearing room was electric. The laughter from before had only just died down, but the smirks on lawmakers' faces showed that control had already slipped away from the chair. Every camera in the chamber was pointed at the witness table. Every reporter was leaning forward, sensing history, or at least viral gold, was about to happen. Ilhan Omar adjusted her microphone, her expression sharp and deliberate. She wasn't about to let this guest turn her committee into a comedy club. "Mr. Daniels," she began, her tone slicing through the noise. "You've made your opinions clear, but let's not confuse clever remarks with facts. The American people deserve substance, not sound bites." Daniels nodded, completely unbothered. "You're right, Congresswoman, but sometimes sound bites are the only way the American people actually hear the truth." Since full speeches rarely make it past the edit room, a burst of laughter rolled through the audience. Even the chairman couldn't hide a grin this time. Omar's eyes narrowed slightly. "I see," she said, flipping through her notes. "So, you're implying that this committee, and by extension, Congress, manipulates information." "I'm not implying," he replied. "I'm confirming." The chamber erupted. Some lawmakers literally leaned back, hands over their mouths in disbelief. Others laughed openly, shaking their heads as if they couldn't believe he had the guts to say it. Omar raised her hand sharply. "Order," she said, her patience clearly fading. "Mr. Daniels, This is not a platform for conspiracy theories. With respect, Daniels said, calm as ever. Neither is it a platform for selective truth. I think both sides of the aisle have had enough of that. That line landed like thunder. Even a few Democrats chuckled, nodding despite themselves. The chairman's gavel came down again, more in amusement than control. Order, let's allow the gentleman to finish his point. Omar tried to recover, straightening her papers. Fine, then tell us, Mr. Daniels. If you think this process is so broken, what would you do differently? Daniels didn't hesitate. For starters, he said, leaning forward, I'd make every lawmaker answer the same kind of questions. They asked the rest of us. The laughter this time was unstoppable. Members of Congress were covering their faces. Aides were giggling behind their laptops. And one journalist could be heard whispering, "Oh, he did not just say that." Omar's face remained unreadable, though her voice grew colder. You seem very confident for someone sitting in the witness seat. Daniel smiled faintly. Confidence comes easy when you've got nothing to hide. That broke the dam completely. Laughter shook the room so hard that the gaveling chairman eventually gave up trying to silence anyone. The witness had turned the entire chamber into an audience. And Ilhan Omar, for once, had no retort ready. Daniels continued, sensing the room was his. You know, he said conversationally, when I walked in here, my friends told me, don't argue with Congress. They'll twist your words. He paused dramatically. I told them, that's okay. They twist everything else too. The crowd lost it. Lawmakers were literally pounding their desks. The gallery spectators were roaring with laughter. Even a few of Omar's allies had to turn away to hide their smiles. Omar exhaled slowly, visibly trying to stay composed. Mr. Daniels, you're dangerously close to contempt of Congress. He raised an eyebrow. With all due respect, Congresswoman, I think Congress is already in enough contempt. From the American people. That was the mic drop. The hearing chamber erupted into pure chaos. Laughter, applause, and cheers bounced off the marble walls. The chairman was laughing so hard he could barely speak. One of the junior representatives could be heard saying under his breath, "He's not wrong." Omar's glare could have cut through steel. You think you're funny, Mr. Daniels? He met her gaze steadily. No, ma'am. I think the truth is funny sometimes. Especially when it finally gets heard out loud. It was over. She knew it. Everyone knew it. Daniels had not only held his ground, he'd completely flipped the power dynamic. The very committee, designed to question him, had become his stage. As the laughter subsided, Daniels straightened his papers, his tone suddenly serious. Look, he said, I don't hate anyone here. I actually respect this process. But respect works both ways. You can't demand honesty from citizens if politicians can't handle it themselves. The room fell silent. For the first time all day, even Omar had no response. Daniels continued, his voice calm, but resolute. I came here because I believe in this country. And I believe disagreement isn't disrespect. It's democracy. But when you label everyone who disagrees with you as evil, racist, or brainwashed, you're not protecting democracy. You're suffocating it. Those words hit hard. Even his critics sat quietly, digesting the moment. Omar finally leaned back, her expression unreadable. Are you finished, Mr. Daniels? He gave a polite nod. Yes, ma'am. Though judging by the reaction, I'd say the American people might want an encore. The room burst into laughter again. This time, full and unrestrained, cameras zoomed in on faces glowing with amusement and shock. Every outlet knew they had just captured a moment that would dominate headlines. The chairman, still chuckling, finally managed to speak. All right, I think we've all had quite enough entertainment for one session. Mr. Daniels, thank you for your testimony. Daniels gathered his notes, gave a respectful nod to the panel, and stood. As he walked out, The cameras followed him like a celebrity leaving a premiere. Staffers whispered, "That's going viral within the hour." Meanwhile, Omar sat still, expressionless, as the echoes of laughter lingered like thunder. In the corner of the room, one aide muttered quietly, "Congress just got flipped, live on national TV." But what no one expected was how fast the clip spread, and how Ilhan Omar herself would respond once the internet turned the hearing into a national spectacle. By the time Mr. Daniels stepped out of the congressional chamber, the clip was already online. A young intern had uploaded it to social media barely 5 minutes after the exchange ended, and within moments, it spread like wildfire. On YouTube, the title read, "Trump supporter humiliates Ilhan Omar. Congress erupts in laughter." On Twitter, the hashtags Omar vs Daniels and Tierchas Congress laughs were trending in multiple countries. Dozens of political commentators were replaying the moment where Daniels delivered his devastating one-liners, and users were flooding the comments with fire emojis, clapping hands, and endless memes. Every news channel, from the most liberal to the most conservative, scrambled to get the footage on air. Anchors interrupted regular programming just to show the viral confrontation. In an unexpected twist, one host said, "A congressional hearing turned into what some are calling the most entertaining session in years." Clips of lawmakers laughing uncontrollably played on repeat, while analysts debated whether Daniels had gone too far or simply spoken what millions were already thinking. Outside the building, a crowd had already gathered. Supporters waited near the steps, chanting Daniels' name. He exited calmly, smiling politely as reporters swarmed him. "Mr. Daniels, what's your response to Representative Omar's remarks? Do you regret your comments? Did you plan this moment?" He raised a hand, signaling for quiet. "No regrets," he said simply. "I just told the truth. And apparently, the truth still makes people laugh." That line was instantly clipped and replayed thousands of times online. Within hours, Daniels' name topped search trends. His social media accounts exploded with new followers, and news outlets requested interviews from every major network. Meanwhile, inside the Capitol, the atmosphere was very different. Ilhan Omar sat in her office, watching the footage play over and over on a muted television screen. Every few seconds, she could see herself in the clip, tightening her jaw, glancing down at her notes, visibly losing control of the exchange. Her aides stood awkwardly in silence. Finally, one of them spoke. "Congresswoman, should we issue a statement?" Omar didn't look away from the screen. "No," she said quietly. "Not yet," but her silence didn't stop the noise. By evening, major headlines framed the moment as a political earthquake. Hearing turns, hilarious. Witness flips the script on Omar. Congress in chaos. After Trump. Supporters' savage comeback. Crowd laughs as Omar loses control. Even late-night comedians jumped on the story. Clips from the hearing played with dramatic background music and laugh tracks. Daniels was painted as everything from a hero to a troublemaker, depending on who you asked. By midnight, the original video had crossed 10 million views. Celebrities, journalists, and everyday Americans all had opinions. Some praised Daniels for standing up to the establishment, while others accused him of disrespecting an elected official. But one thing was certain: nobody could stop talking about it. The next morning, Daniels appeared on a morning news show. Calm as ever, wearing the same suit from the hearing, he greeted the host with a smile. "Mr. Daniels," one anchor asked, "were you surprised by how big this moment became?" He chuckled. "Honestly, yes. I didn't think telling the truth would be considered headline-worthy. But I guess that says a lot about politics these days. Do you think Ilhan Omar deserves the criticism she's getting online?" The host pressed. Daniels paused. I don't think anyone deserves hate. I disagreed with her ideas, not her humanity. I just think she's forgotten who she represents. The people, not the headlines. That answer won him even more respect. Within minutes, clips from the interview flooded every social platform again. Comment sections overflowed with praise. Man, this guy's got class. He roasted her and still stayed respectful. Legend. Finally, someone with backbone and manners. Meanwhile, Omar faced a storm of backlash. Critics accused her of arrogance and unprofessionalism. Others defended her, saying the laughter was a sexist reaction to a woman losing control of a hearing. In the midst of the uproar, Omar finally released a short statement late that evening. I will always defend truth, even when others perform for applause. My focus remains on serving the people, not trending online. But it didn't land the way she hoped. Replies flooded in with clips of Daniel's viral quotes. The internet wasn't buying it. Daniels, on the other hand, remained calm. He refused to engage in insults or victory laps. Instead, he posted a single tweet: "Respect isn't about titles. It's about honesty." That one sentence, only 5 words, hit harder than any speech. It was retweeted hundreds of thousands of times. By the next day, he was invited to speak at multiple universities and political events. People saw him as a symbol, not just of free speech, but of composure under pressure. Even critics admitted, whatever his politics, Daniels had done something rare. He had won the room, not with anger, not with shouting, but with calm conviction. And behind the scenes, whispers began to circulate. Was this the beginning of a new political career? Would Daniels run for office? Could one viral moment change everything? The internet buzzed with speculation, and while Ilhan Omar's team tried to move past the incident, the clip continued to dominate every platform. In just 24 hours, it had become one of the most viewed political videos in years. Proof that in an age of outrage, authenticity still ruled the internet. But just when things seemed to settle, Congress called Daniels back for a second hearing. And this time, the entire world was watching. A week after the viral hearing, Washington, D.C. was buzzing again. Every major news outlet was camped outside the Capitol. Reporters jostled for position, microphones ready, cameras rolling. The headline everywhere read, "Daniels returns to Congress. This time, the whole world is watching." Inside the same room where laughter once erupted was packed beyond capacity. Extra security stood by the doors. The audience was larger, louder, and far more divided. Half cheering for Daniels, half skeptical of his newfound fame. Daniels walked in quietly, dressed in the same navy suit, the same calm expression on his face. This time, there was no smirk, just focus. He carried a small folder and a single pen, nothing more. As he took his seat at the witness table, the murmur of the crowd grew. Lawmakers exchanged glances. Cameras zoomed in. Everyone was waiting for another viral moment. But Daniels wasn't here for comedy this time. Ilhan Omar entered moments later. Her posture was firm, her face calm but unreadable. Unlike before, she didn't carry a stack of papers, just one thin notepad. The chairman called the session to order. "Today's hearing is a continuation of last week's discussion," he said. "We ask that all participants remain respectful." A few chuckles echoed. Everyone remembered how that went last time. Daniels leaned into the microphone. "Mr. Chairman, Congresswoman Omar, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to return. I know last week's hearing didn't go as planned." He paused, scanning the room. But maybe that's what made it real. The audience listened in silence. There was no laughter now, just anticipation. Daniels continued, his tone calm but deliberate. "Last week, people laughed because the truth cut through the script. But the truth isn't a punchline. It's a responsibility. We all laughed because, deep down, We recognized how far we've drifted from honest conversation. Omar watched closely, her expression softening slightly. Daniels went on, I want to make something clear. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came here because I believe America works best when its leaders can take criticism, even from those they disagree with. A few lawmakers nodded. Cameras clicked. I believe, Daniels said firmly, that respect isn't earned by titles or microphones. It's earned by listening. That line hit hard. The audience murmured in agreement. Even Omar's aides, seated behind her, exchanged subtle glances. Omar leaned forward, speaking for the first time. Mr. Daniels, I appreciate your tone today. You certainly have the country's attention. But tell me, do you think public ridicule helps restore respect? Daniels smiled faintly. No, ma'am, I don't think ridicule helps. But I do think laughter reveals something. It shows what people are really feeling, but are afraid to say. He paused, then added, and what they're feeling right now is exhaustion. Tired of seeing leaders argue instead of lead. The crowd broke into light applause. The chairman allowed it, knowing the moment was bigger than protocol. Omar folded her hands. So, Mr. Daniels, what do you suggest we do differently? Daniels exhaled slowly. We stop pretending the other side is evil. We stop treating every disagreement as betrayal. We remember that America doesn't need two enemies. It needs two perspectives, working toward one goal. Silence filled the room. Even the cameras seemed to pause. He continued, his voice steady but emotional. I'm not a politician. I'm not perfect. But last week taught me something. People are starving for honesty. They don't care who wins the argument. They care who tells the truth. Applause rippled through the chamber again. This time, even Omar didn't try to stop it. Daniels glanced toward her. Congresswoman Omar, I know we disagree, but I also know you've worked hard for what you believe in. I respect that, and I hope you'll respect that I stand for something too. Not for a party, but for principle. Omar hesitated, then slowly nodded. I can respect that. It was a small exchange, but the room felt it. The tension that once defined them was replaced by mutual acknowledgement. Daniels continued, I don't expect everyone to agree with me. I just want us to remember, debate isn't war. It's how freedom breathes. The words hit like a sermon. Reporters' pens raced to capture every line. And then, for the first time, Omar smiled. A genuine one. Well, Mr. Daniels, she said lightly, you've certainly redeemed yourself from last week's stand-up routine. The audience laughed warmly. Daniels smiled back. I told my wife I'd try to stay out of trouble this time. That drew another wave of laughter. But this time it wasn't mocking. It was shared. Even the chairman chuckled. That's progress, he said. We might just make civility go viral next. As the hearing wound down, Omar extended her hand. Daniels rose and shook it, to a standing ovation from much of the audience. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment of unlikely respect. Two people from opposite sides, finding common ground, even for a second. Outside the Capitol, reporters waited again. Daniels stopped briefly to speak. Last time I made people laugh, he said. This time, I hope I made them think. That quote became the headline of the day. From clash to conversation, Daniels and Omar find respect. Online, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Viewers from both political sides praised the exchange for showing something rare. Grace. Clips of Daniels' closing words flooded social media. The tone had shifted from laughter to reflection. People weren't just entertained. They were inspired. By evening, one of the top comments under the viral video read, "We need more Daniels and fewer divisions." And just like that, what began as a fiery confrontation had evolved into something greater. A lesson in humility, courage, and the power of calm truth. But as Daniels' message spread worldwide, it sparked something unexpected, a movement for honesty in politics, one that neither he nor Omar could have predicted. In the days that followed Daniel's second hearing, something remarkable happened. What began as a viral clash turned into a national conversation, and then into a movement. Clips of Daniel's calm, measured words flooded every corner of social media. Influencers, educators, even celebrities began sharing them with captions like, "This is how you debate with respect." Talk shows replayed the moment where Daniels and Ilhan Omar shook hands. It wasn't just the gesture, it was the symbolism. Two people with opposite beliefs had managed to face each other without hate, without shouting, without walking away. That image, the handshake, became the cover photo of countless posts. Memes labeled it, "The day civility made a comeback." Daniel's name trended again, but this time for a different reason. Commentators from both sides praised his composure. Some called him the most balanced voice in America. He was invited to speak at universities, civic events, and even schools. His talks weren't about politics anymore. They were about listening, integrity, and courage. "The truth isn't loud," he told one audience. "It's calm, because calm doesn't need to prove it's right. It just is." The applause that followed wasn't wild. It was meaningful. People were hungry for that kind of leadership again. Meanwhile, in Washington, something unexpected happened. During a later session, Omar referenced Daniels directly. "Whether you agreed with him or not," she said, "Mr. Daniels reminded us that respect is not weakness, it's strength, and we could all use more of it in this chamber." The statement earned her rare bipartisan applause. Even Daniels, watching from home, smiled. News outlets began to call it the Daniels effect. Pundits noted how online discourse briefly became civil. People debated, but listened. Comment sections, at least for a moment, looked human again. Journalists who once mocked him now invited him for interviews. "How did you stay so composed?" one host asked. Daniel smiled. "When you know who you are, you don't need to shout to be heard." That line went viral again. Millions of views within hours. But this time, the laughter was replaced by reflection. Across the world, his story was translated into different languages. International news outlets called it the day decency went viral. Students used his hearing as a case study in leadership and communication. For Daniels, life changed, but he didn't chase the fame. He continued his work quietly, mentoring young leaders, advocating for respectful public discourse, and rejecting every attempt to turn his moment into a political weapon. "Fame fades," he said in one of his speeches, but integrity doesn't. As for Ilhan Omar, she too grew from the experience. Her future hearings were calmer, more focused, less confrontational. Whether she admitted it or not, Daniels had left an impression. Not through mockery, but through strength delivered softly. Months later, the two appeared together on a televised panel about unity in politics. The host introduced them with a grin. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the two people who made Congress go viral." For the right reasons this time, laughter filled the studio. Omar smiled and extended her hand again. Daniel shook it, just as he had that day in the chamber. "Guess we did start a conversation," she said. Daniels replied, "Let's hope we keep it going." The audience stood in applause. Cameras captured it. Two people from different worlds, showing that disagreement didn't have to mean division. That moment became the perfect ending to what had started as a clash, and turned into a lesson, one that reached millions around the globe. As the camera zoomed in on Daniel's face, his final words summed up the message perfectly. If we can laugh together, we can listen together. And if we can listen, maybe, just maybe, we can heal. The screen faded to black. If you believe respect can change the world, Type unity in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring true stories like this one.